our mics before we speak, and then those that are joining us online, when you speak for the first time, if you wouldn't mind just telling us your name so we can keep track. The MAC public comment process that's allowed for members of the public to comment on any item that fall under MAC's jurisdiction. There's nobody here in the room, but anybody that wants to make a comment today, they can request a form to fill out to speak. Also, I think everybody knows, but just make sure you grab your validation ticket. And with that, let's go ahead and going to, I guess, our first item, call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to make comments that fall under MAC jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items, or items for discussion and not for action. I didn't receive any requests. Gordon, did you receive anything?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right. And then also MAC also provides opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments. And I did not receive any written comments as well. With that, let's go to our next our next item is the approval of the last month's meeting minutes, April 1st. Gordon, if you don't mind sharing, just so those that probably didn't get a chance to review the agenda packet, but most of them already have provided any comments. If we can please briefly go through it, make sure all your comments were addressed, or if then there's anything that you would like to bring up. Does anybody have any questions or comment that they would like to bring up on the minutes?
I do have one comment. Just in preparing the minutes, we were prototyping a AI system that helps with the minutes by taking the recordings and then isolating people's voices, and then I can assign names to voices, and it'll produce kind of a draft minutes for me to start working with. So since this is kind of a first prototype, if you notice anything that's off or something that's not clear, let us know so that, you know, if there's something I missed in my revisions, that we get that correct. I did notice a couple things where it thought two people who had similar voices were the same person, so you can't trust it completely, but it was kind of a time saver. So we'll see how it goes as we move forward.
No, I'm glad to see all those AI minutes programs are popping out all over the place. So now we're gonna have an abundance of recorded meeting minutes now. The problem's gonna be going back and reading them all. But anyways, with that said,
So does that mean that these are going to be extremely long to read?
Yeah,
it does provide us a good summary. I went through it. I don't know how much editing Gordon put through it, but I mean, it's not. I mean, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I did edit it quite a bit, but it does do a pretty good job of summarizing it. If anything, it probably made them a little bit shorter than I typically do because I tend to put more detail in. So that's why I'm asking, if you notice some detail that you think should have been in there that was cut out or summarized too much, then let us know. But in general, I think it does a pretty decent job.
Okay, good to know.
Anyone else has a question or comment? Is there a motion to approve the minute?
Mr. Chair, I'll motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Gene.
This is Warren. I will motion, or I'll second that, please.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go run through the roll call, starting with ADOT. Who I don't believe is here today. Avondale,
Yes.
Buckeye? Chandler?
Yes.
El Mirage?
Yes.
Lawrence? Gilbert?
Yes.
Glendale?
Yes.
Goodyear?
Yes.
Maricopa County?
Yes.
Mesa?
Yes.
Peoria?
Yes.
Phoenix?
Yes.
Scottsdale?
Yes.
Surprise?
Yes.
Tempe? Tolleson?
Yes.
Thank you. And Youngtown? It looks like the motion passes unanimously.
All right. Now moving on to our cases for our 2026 work code. Item number 4, case number 2601, miscellaneous corrections. There hasn't been a lot of action on this item this year. Anybody wants to bring anything up on this? I haven't seen anything come up. Gordon, no? All right. We'll move on to the next case. At number 5, case 2602, revisions to detail 206-1 and 206-2 for the concrete scupper, and also sidewalk detail 230.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only, really no update since the last meeting. The only thing I had done was I had removed the, on 206-1, had removed the illustration for the weld plates and the circles for where the posts were gonna go. This one is, like, I think you mentioned, it's up for action today. I don't know if, hopefully everybody had an opportunity to review it. Everybody's good with it. I know it's been through the ringer a little bit since January. Not many changes have been made since the last polished version. You guys all have the clean version there. You had the clean version at the last meeting as well.
Yeah, that is correct. Just to add to the point, Jim, this is kind of the second time we're presenting this. Nothing's really changed.
Nope. The only thing that changed is what I mentioned about the illustration of the weld plates right there on that scupper plan view. Yep. Just pulled the little squares and circles out. It's kind of redundant with 206-3 anyway. I know the committee was on the fence on whether, some say, oh yeah, it's not bad, and others say, well, we don't necessarily need that there. I know it's redundant, so with 206-3. But yeah, I'd open it up for discussion, see if anybody has any comments on it, Mr. Chair, and if not, we can see where it goes from there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Does anybody have a comment or question on this? If not, I guess I would ask all the members, does anybody need additional time to review this? That it's worth kind of moving or pushing the case to next month, or if not, I'll entertain a motion. I know, like Gene said, we've had quite a few discussions on this particular case already.
Hearing nothing, Mr. Chair, I would motion to approve this case today.
All right. Thank you.
Motion to vote, I'm sorry.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Dan Nissen with City of Peoria, and I second the motion.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan.
Okay, and for a roll call vote. Starting with ADOT. Avondale. This is for case 2602. Jim, are you there? Buckeye. Chandler.
Yes.
El Mirage.
Yes.
Lawrence. Gilbert.
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear,
Yes.
Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe, Tolleson,
Yes.
Youngtown. Jim, are you back? Avondale? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you, Jim.
everyone. Started off a little rocky on the first three, but
No, sometimes they linger, but some of these cases probably better be taken the year they're supposed to be taken care of, right? No need to roll them over. Let's go to item number 6, case 26-03, revisions to curb and gutter details 220-1 and 220-2.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one here, I was just looking for feedback from committee members. If we can go through each one, or if somebody has a preference right out of the gate, or if they would rather not see the detail changed. I'd like to get some kind of feedback so I can keep moving forward with it. But really, the consensus was to clear up the confusion with the little wedge that's on the gutter pan there. A lot of people think that's an actual measurement, and they want to know what that measurement is, and it can be calculated. So I presented the original as it's written in MAG to the top left, and then the modified version 1, top right corner, modified version 2 on the bottom. The note that says slope is one inch over 24, that wouldn't necessarily exist. We have that was just for my own reference, but we have the line underneath the bottom, the subgrade of the curb that indicates 1 inch lift over that, 1 inch rise over that 24-inch horizontal distance. So really, in a nutshell, I had moved the height to the back of the curb. So the curb face H still is the curb face in both modified version 1 and modified version 2. It's just relocated from over there at the lip of gutter to the back of the curb. So nothing technical has changed. No measurements have changed. They just were cleared up a bit. So with that,
And I believe, did you get any comment, I guess, throughout the month? Or anybody
No.
else a preference?
no, and I have not made, to that point, I have not made any changes or updates to the case since the last meeting. When I had asked committee members to give some feedback, or at least bring some feedback to this meeting on what their preference is on the 3 different, I believe there's 3 of them, Gordon. You have the type A, the type C, and then the type D. Was there one more? Aha, there it is. Type E. And, if committee members do not want to see a revision to this case, please speak up. If you have a preference on which modified version you want for each type, please speak up.
Yeah, we can open up for additional comments. I think last time you got some input, right, on some of the versions. I will say that after all the research that you've done, it's probably best to memorialize it at this point, right? Because it started with industry reaching out.
Yeah, I did.
With questions on this particular detail, and
So I did, that's a good point. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did reach out to the AGC and industry, and we had talked about how those forms are constructed and how those slip forms, especially for type A, how the slip forms are built and how they're set on the machine. And since we're not changing anything technical here, it doesn't affect industry at all. It's just mainly for those engineers that are out of state that don't ever work with this detail, that call and have questions saying, hey, what's this measurement here? When really it's, to me, I don't know why they'd be asking that, because the crucial one is down at the bottom, where if you look at the original type A, the crucial measurement is that 1 inch. Now the line doesn't go all the way to the heel of the curb, to the back of the curb, below the curb there. It should. I think that's where some of that confusion may lie as well. So they think on that gutter pan where the H is at, representing, now the H is specific to the face of curb, which there's a table, well, it's not even a table, it's 6 inch unless otherwise noted by the engineer, which can be 4 inch, right? In a residential neighborhood, if you're doing a rolled curb, you'd transition to a 4 inch. But they think there's that measurement right there, that they're missing that 3/4 inch, or that we left it out, or what is that? That's the question I get, is what is this measurement right here? So it's kind of a little bit of background on it. It's not a very technical case at all. It's just a matter of moving some measurements around.
And last time, I believe Warren had said that his preference was version or modified detail 1, right? The one on the top.
For type A, that is correct. Warren did.
That's correct, guys. Hey, by the way, we're not seeing the graphics out here.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I see there you go.
That's good.
apologize for that. It was showing us sharing on our end over here.
Yeah, no wonder why nobody was giving feedback.
There you go. Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Chair, if you'll open it up for discussion, that would be
No,
wonderful.
definitely. I guess just an overall input or shout out any objections to. I think I'm good with either option. Me personally, option 1 or 2. Just because again, I think that additional information is helpful. It's not hurting the detail at all. So, but it would be nice it might be a combination, Jim, in my opinion, to keep it consistent, right? That you show the dimensions on the left side of the curve.
Yeah, I would keep it consistent. I would agree with that. If we're gonna go with a modified version, because one, if you take all the curve differences, type C, type A, type F, and you juxtapose them, they follow the same layout.
Mhm.
So, and that goes with, now I don't have a modified version 3 on that because it really didn't need one.
But I think it would make it easier on overall details to see that the face of the curve is always on the left side of the drawing, right? That's what I was saying as far as being consistent.
The face of the curve is always on the left side of the drawing.
Yes, like, for example, modified detail 2, if you go all the way back to the first page on the type A girder, that one, it can vary, right? But you're at least showing that there's a face dimension on the left side. It's H because it can vary.
Right, 4 or 6
But
inch,
it's-
yeah.
That way, every single type of curve will have that dimension on the left side.
Okay, so scroll down to the next one.
So in this one, it'd be more like
Oh, I see what you're,
modified.
I see
2.
what you're saying. Yeah.
So. And I think this one addresses, I think Ryan's earlier comments to make sure that we're ensuring getting almost like a 6-inch consistent thickness.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and I think modified version 2 on that one would be appropriate. Type A, I'm partial to, as Warren is, I'm partial to
Mhm.
modified version 1. And then for
Could
that
you-
one there, yeah.
Could you just move the 3/4 inch onto modified 2?
Well, we eliminated that confusing plane line off of modified 2. The 3/4 isn't really necessary because you have the 1 inch below. As long as you extrapolate that line to the heel of the curb,
Yeah, because that critical dimension is really from the lip of the gutter up, that 1/4 inch.
right?
That's really what's controlling your.
Mhm.
So I guess, let me retract that, my initial statement. I think modified version 2 would probably be my preference after taking into consideration that that 3/4 inch is redundant with the 1 inch lift, the 1 inch rise over the 24 inch run. And it doesn't calc out to exactly 0.75 either,
Yeah, it's just close enough to.
but
call
it can be
3/4.
rounded, exactly. So I'd do 2 on that one. I would do, in my opinion, if I was pushing this case through by myself, I would do modified version 2 on that one as well.
And then this one, we probably just need to show.
Just
the,
extrapolate that line to the heel and that's it. Which I think the discussion on that, somebody had brought up, it might have been Peter and Gordon, that the reason why they didn't carry that line all the way through is because it kind of disappears with the other line.
I think, once back when printed versions of this stuff used to be a lot more prevalent.
Now you can really zoom in on that CAD.
Now you can
or on
really
that
zoom
PDF.
in, and I think it's half and half now. There's still
Mm.
very valuable use of printed copies of this, but printing versions of, or the clarity of the prints it's a lot better than before.
They are, and it's not to scale per se.
Yeah.
That's funny if you look at E.
Yes.
On E, it still is missing that little, so the
You know,
modified version extends the line also.
wonder if I can do a poll and email a poll out to the,
Well, let's ask it. Does anybody have any objections to the overall? Or is everyone good with the, if people want to take some time and we can send out a poll, or you can send out a poll, or if
I'm
there's no
thinking,
strong preference?
Hey, Mr. Chair, I like the changes we're making, on the typical vertical curb and gutter one. I do actually prefer the modified one that has the 3/4 inch dimension called out. I actually like that on there. I think that helps.
Okay,
thank you, Ryan.
so should we then have the overall face of curve dimensions on the left side and the 3/4 inch dimension called out on the remaining curves? Because again, goes back and forth a little bit. So some of the details you have the line, some of them you don't.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
Um,
So 6 inch, yeah. So if you look at this detail in particular, the top right detail, modified version 1, the 6 inch is, right there at the lip of gutter, right? Or at the lip of gutter to the right of the illustration. To kind of make it consistent with some of the other ones that I was doing, I moved it to the back of curb. I don't know if there's a preference. Sounds like Ryan kind of likes the idea of having that measurement identified there, because you can have the 3/4 inch lift plus the 1/4 inch buildup for the additional asphalt, so you're above. So you're
Right. I like to see the 3/4 inch and 1/4 inch dimensions, whether that's 6 inches there or at the back of the curb, on the left-hand side. That doesn't matter to me so much, but I do like seeing the 3/4 inch and the 1/4 inch dimensions.
I think it'd be cleaner if you move the overall face of curve dimension to the backside.
okay.
That way you know for sure that 3/4 inch dimension is intended.
Okay. So you take modified version 2 basically and just put the line back, put the line back across to identify the 3/4 inch? Is that what you're, okay.
And that can be the theme that is carried across the different types.
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
And maybe can I suggest a clean version of that so we can present it to the committee and then have everybody take a clean look and maybe.
Yeah, can you scroll up to the mountable curb real quick? No, I'm sorry, the next one down. There you go. Anything, do we want to do anything with that one in particular? Just extrapolate the line all the way to the heel, okay? And then the next one up, Gordon, please. Here too, we have the half inch, as Ryan had noted, we already had the half inch in there per the original on modified version 2. But then stay consistent by moving the 2 measurements on the back, correct?
Yes.
At least I got it right. 6 + 4 = 10.
Gene, you're doing great. These are.
Okay, thanks for the encouraging words. All right, next one up, Gordon, please. Okay, there we go. And this one too, stick with the modified version 2, just carry the 3/4 inch down. Yes, I can definitely clean that up for the committee.
Does anybody else have any other comment on this case? All right, I think we have an approach.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ryan, for chiming in.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Ryan and Warren and everybody else. Okay, let's go to case number 7, case 2604. Revisions to section 602. I always forget the acronym for this type of pipe, but is Arbit. I didn't see him earlier. Did he jump?
I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
Yep.
Centrally cast fiberglass reinforced polymer. Centrifugal.
Yeah. So what we're proposing to do here is last year we added FRP and mechanical joint steel casing as casing options. And I failed to go through it and update the language. We added the tables. So this draft in front of you is addressing those needs of getting things clarified for what is being what actually happens in real time with regards to the language. So again, in 602.2.4 as an example, steel or CRFMP casing, it's just listing both materials now, as opposed to just leaving it as steel. Or we could just change it to the casing if you guys want to do that as well. I'm just spelling out the casing types that are in the spec because they weren't addressed equally before. We're trying to provide equality here. And then down, there you go, down in that section there, this is something that I need you all to think about and read through. And I just dealt with this about an hour ago. For a while, there's been a use of casing spacers, which I believe everybody is familiar with, to, I don't know why my video is not working, but there's been a use of casing spacers for gravity feed applications. And the problem with that is you can't order those spacers until the casing is parked, because you have to go through the casing and you have to have every spacer custom built at a specific spot where it's going to land in the casing, supporting that said sewer line, to make sure that the sewer line is perfectly on grade. Because if you order casing spacers like you would for a water line, let's say a 24-inch ductile iron water line inside of a 40-inch or 50, whatever casing, you would just order those at the beginning of the job, and they would show up, and you would put them on the ductile, and you would push the ductile through. And as the casing slightly meandered through the earth, a little bit left, a little right, whatever, it wouldn't matter because it's a pressurized device, pressurized pipe. But for gravity, you can't do that. You have to wait until the casing's parked. And the issue that we're having in the industry is becoming flooded, and we are seeing delays as much as 12 weeks to get those spacers on site. That then the job is sitting there with a shore box in the ground, waiting for those spacers to show up, and that could be in a roadway with traffic control. The traffic control has to stay up for 12 weeks. So what we're recommending is we use the more tried and true, which is the wood skids that are used to carry the product line through the casing on line and grade, or on grade, I should say accurately, and then it's filled with pea gravel to lock it in and support it for the long haul. That way you're not relying on the wood skids to hold it in place, or railing if it's flush bell PVC and HDPE, fused HDPE PVC, flush bell VCP, or flush bell FRP. We just put it through a casing on Hobus. We're doing that on a tunnel up in Peoria, and then we fill it with pea gravel. So that's what this rewrite is addressing. It still leaves the option in there for grade spacers, but it states that as of right now, this is the industry standard lead time for those products to arrive.
Arvid, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm not real familiar with this railings that you're talking about and whatnot. Is there any way you could send me some photos of what that looks like so I can just get a better understanding?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
This is Warren. Yeah, Ryan, that's a good idea. If you could share that with all of us, Arvid, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll get it over to Gordon, and then he can send it out to you all. Now, we've got a couple examples of projects where we actually put 3 18-inchers through a casing on rail. That gives a good example of just the variety of it. And then we have another project in downtown Phoenix we're doing right now that we're going to start that has 30-inch, 24-inch steel pipes, chilled water lines through a casing on railing.
Hey, Arvid, it's Jim. So I reading through your addition there in red, I thought the purpose of the spacing casers was to eliminate the need for pea gravel.
Well, it's not to eliminate pea gravel. It provides you the freedom to not use it. You can always put it in if you want to. Certain agencies still require us filling the casing with pea gravel, even with casing spacers, because they like to know that the annular inside the casing is filled up because of their preference, I guess you could say that. Casing spacers in and of themselves in the industry are a device that bolts around a product line and allows you to install a product line through a casing with a shelf life of a 50-year or a 70-year, depending on who you talk to, useful life, because it's a stainless steel product. So it's basically meant to match the life cycle of the product line that's in the casing. So it's a way of getting a product line through a casing with it being restrained. The whole purpose of pea gravel is you can put something through a casing without spacers. You can, on railing or wood, you can fill up that annular space to lock in and support and protect that annular space and secure that carrier pipe in the casing. But then you can always vacuum that pea gravel out in the future if you ever want to do something inside that casing again.
Right.
So Arvid, this doesn't affect the use of like maybe a lightweight grout or anything like that to lock it in, right? Do you still see that as a practice?
No, that's been eliminated. That was eliminated back in 2014 because, and we're dealing with this right now on a City of Mesa project where when you fill a casing with grout, even if you fill the product line with water, you always run the risk of floating that product line inside the casing, even if it's on spacers, because spacers still have anywhere from a 1 inch to 1.5 inch gap between the top riser and runner and the casing. And on a gravity feed application, the last thing you want to do is float that sewer line or that gravity line. So the advantage again of the pea gravel is you can blow it in, it fills it up, and then you can always just vacuum it out at a later date if you need to remove it to do something inside of there. But it mimics a trench line where you would use pea gravel as a bedding, install the product line, and then use pea gravel around it. Very similar to what the gas industry does. They put 6 inches on the bottom, they put the gas line in, they fill it up with pea gravel, the 12 inches above the gas line, and then they walk away, and then they backfill with native. That way they've got a product around their gas line that they know is protected, and the material will fall away if someone were to dig into that area accidentally without blue stake. It would fall away and expose that gas line so that people could see the yellow line.
So there's no header per se on each end of the carrier pipe. Is that what I'm hearing?
You mean the casing?
The casing, yeah. There's not a cementitious header on each
Oh no,
end.
there's a bulkhead. There's a bulkhead still. Yeah, Gene. There's still a bulkhead, a brick and mortar bulkhead. And I'll send you examples of the drawings that we've used over the years that you can look at. But yeah, there's still a brick and mortar bulkhead. But then what we do is we hang a 2-inch or multiple 2-inch PVC conduits are hung inside the casing at 12 o'clock at the very top of it with some 3-inch rings. And then through those 2-inch PVC conduits, then we blow the pea gravel in. And then as it starts to fill up the casing, you pull the PVC conduit back as it fills up the casing all the way from bottom to top.
And the bulkhead would prevent any chance of that pea gravel becoming a French drain, correct?
Correct. Oh yes, absolutely. I see what you're saying. Yeah, you can still put the rubber in seals on the end of the casing, which is recommended after you built the brick and mortar bulkhead. You just don't want to use a rubber in seal by itself. A rubber in seal by itself is not a structural device. It's simply a balloon is all it is. So if you want to create more of a watertight environment, EPCOR requires us to cover the bulkhead with a tar coating. So we've actually, in years past, gone and bought the black spray that you would use in a swamp cooler, and we'll spray layers of that over the end of the bulkhead. And that, in their mind, makes it watertight, and they're happy with that. And then you can still put a rubber in seal over that if you want to help prevent water from seeping into the casing. But the pea gravel in the casing obviously locks it in, so that even if water gets in there, it's not going to affect the carrier line from floating. Without the pea gravel, you run the risk that if water were to ever get in that casing, it could, in theory, float that carrier line off the railing or the wood skids.
So Arvid and Mr. Chair, the reason why I brought that up is just to clarify that something like that is not necessary to have in this case. Is that fair to say, because it's addressed somewhere else?
The bulkhead?
Yeah.
Well, the bulkhead is not addressed specifically in this detail because every single project that I've ever seen spells out in the design a brick and mortar bulkhead.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily. I especially when they're development projects.
Well, I apologize. You're right, Jim. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of them, and they just that's all they have is that rubber boot, and we don't like the rubber boots. I tried it once, and it was a disaster. So I'd like to see that, and if we're going to deal with this, because there is discussion in this spec about bulkheads, I'd like to add something where you've got to use a solid bulkhead, brick and mortar or concrete, and not the rubber boot alone. Because I get tired of.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's right there.
Tired of telling them to rubber boots. So.
Thank you, Gordon. It says bulkheads consisting of brick and mortar or concrete shall be constructed at the end of the casing. Bulkheads shall be minimum of 8-inch thick. Alternate enclosures may be substituted for brick and mortar or concrete bulkheads if approved by the. So it actually says it right there, Jim.
Yeah, it is addressed in here.
Yeah, it is addressed right there. I apologize.
But just keep a lookout, because sometimes they only use that rubber boot, and you don't want to use that only. That's
No, you're right, Jim. We've encountered that before, and we've been able to show and convey to the parties involved, this thing is the equivalent of a rubber balloon. It has no structural capability. And there was a contractor who wanted us just to follow it and put it on the end of the casing and around the carrier pipe. And then he proceeded to backfill the bore pit with the engineer there and was able to show the engineer that as the dirt started to fill up, it just imploded the rubber end seal into the casing. And now you had the whole interior of the casing exposed to what you were mentioning a minute ago, Gene, which is now there was a pathway for water to start flowing into the casing and filling up the casing.
Thanks, Arvid. I just had a couple more comments, but does anybody else have any other comment?
Mr. Chairman, I've just got one in terms of dry utilities and or non-gravity fed. We've got to be careful that this is applicable when you're talking about this kind of situation. It's not for non-gravity fed systems, especially with dry utilities like electric. If this is used for an electric conduit, then that would be grout filled because of the thermal dissipation requirements. So let's make sure you wouldn't use just pea gravel. That would cause the electric.
No. Yeah, well, again, this isn't, so SRP and APS have their own standards for sure. And we're dealing with that right now where we have to put the duct bank into the casing, the FRP casing, and then we have to fill it with the thermal grout in order to provide that heat dissipation between the circuits.
Yeah, and the spacers are generally required. So I just want to make sure this is.
Well, the spacers are PVC spacers. They're not these ones. They're different.
Yes. So,
Yeah. So,
but I don't want a misinterpretation. This would be for a gravity fed system or a.
well, this is water sewer primarily. Yeah.
Okay, that's just want to make sure that I
Yeah.
can't read that from this distance.
Yeah, there's no mention of electric in any of the examples there because
Well,
they're their own entity.
More, I just want to make sure now that you highlighted that, my eyesight's terrible. I can't read off the screen. It does say gravity system. Okay, as long as we make sure that's clear, it's gravity.
Yeah,
Thank
for the pressurized systems, we're still recommending that the casing spacers be used because anytime you got a pressurized pipe inside of a casing, water, force main, reclaimed water, gas, these are ideal because they allow you to install it, isolate it, keep it separated from the casing ever having contact. And then if there's ever an issue in the future, you can extract it real easy.
Yes, thank you. Now that it's blown up, my eyesight can see it. It does say gravity center or gravity carrier. Good. That's all I was concerned with.
Mr. Chairman, I had one last question. So Arvid, on the fourth sentence down in the middle, you say provide product life run. What exactly does that mean?
Oh, well, yeah, that wording can be changed to whatever you want it to be, but every pipe that's on the market today that goes in the ground, ductile PVC, whatever, it's got a life cycle or a product life run. And so the idea with that statement is just stating that you put a product line through a casing on wood skids or railing and you fill that casing with pea gravel. You in theory have installed it in a trench in the earth. It's the same as if you did that. And so therefore you can know that the pea gravel can always be removed at a later date if you ever need to go into that casing and do something to that product line. Let's say that you want to upsize it or you decide to reuse the casing for something in the future. You can always do that by taking out the pea gravel. So the product, provide the product life run is basically stating it's going to be there for the length of the product's life that's in the ground, regardless of what, no different than a trench line would be if it was filled with pea gravel.
Yeah, Jim, that is kind of a strange sentence.
All right.
And we can wordsmith that however you guys think is best.
That's what I was thinking. We can work, to sharpen it up a little bit. So, okay.
Yeah. I was using a dull pencil. I apologize.
My comments are mainly going to be about the use of the wording of prefer industry methods. not sure that I'm a fan of how that reads, but maybe I guess the first question also would be, is the Rails the standard default for flush bell applications? And is there's no other, because that's how it reads right now. That if it's a flush pipe, it has to be on Rails. If it's a bell
Yeah.
pipe,
You can't use Rails for Belled products, because then the bells would be the only thing resting on the rail. And then you run the potential, like if you have SDR35 20-foot joints in a casing on railing, you're only going to have the bells contacting the rail. You need a flush bell product contacting the rail so that you don't have the chance of a sag in the pipeline joints.
understood, but what I was trying to get to is, would you be able to use like wood skids or casing spacers for a flush bell application? Because it's kind of conflicting. As I was reading through it, I was trying to picture what you were saying yesterday, right? That, or last time we were meeting, that the goal was to kind of lead the design or the industry to Rails and for the flush pipes and wood skids for the belt. But right now, with that sentence being a shall, it almost seems like it limits it to only be a rail for flush applications.
Yeah, no, we can change that however you want. Yeah, I mean, again, this is just my first draft.
Okay.
So you all just need to kind of let me know if you could give me back some ideas how you like the wording. Whether it's in any gravity application, you're either going to have a belled or a flush product going through a casing. If it's flush, the best way to do it is to use rails. You can use wood skids. If you have a belled product, you can't use rails. You need to use wood skids, because you don't want the bells resting on the railing. So then you're left with using the wood skids. You can use casing spacers, but again, it needs to be understood, and this is something you guys can decide to leave in there or not, but it's a reality that you cannot order the spacers until the tunnel is done, which means you're going to be waiting with a bore pit open with no activity happening, with traffic control and whatever. All the cost involved with that is going to be there being spent until those spacers do eventually show up at some point in the future.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of conveying that. I mean, I don't oppose to saying, casing spacers, which take additional time because they have to be cut to match the installation of the casing, can also be used, something along those lines, right?
Okay. Now, what I can do is I'll take it and I'll wordsmith it. I've never done AI in my life, so I can run it through AI a couple times and see what comes back, and then maybe you guys can do that too, who are better at AI. But yeah, it's more so just getting this concept in front of the industry going forward, so that we don't have this default of spacers being the only way to put gravity lines through a casing.
Yeah,
Because the reality is, in most applications, I mean, in my lifetime, I've only ever had to vacuum out a casing once for a gravity feed sewer that had pea gravel in it, and then go in and make it bigger because they wanted to increase the size of it after the fact. But by and large, gravity feed sewer lines, once they're installed in a casing, they're there until the pipe either is overmaxed and a new one gets put in, and then it gets grout abandoned, or something else happens. But it's not very common that gravity casings get replaced. It's more so the pressurized ones where you see them pull out the 16-inch water line and put in a 20-inch water line.
all right. And then the other suggestion I was going to have when it comes to the bulkheads, because I don't have a lot of experience on this particular field, but I always seem to see the same detail for casing that calls for those rubber boots at the ends of the casing.
Right.
Maybe this section can address both, right? The need for bulkheads for that structural component, and the need for a boot for sealing the casing.
Okay. No, that's a good idea. Yeah, we can add that.
Because based on what you're saying, they serve two different functions.
Correct. Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. They both have a purpose in the structural aspect of the tunneling product that you guys are buying. Correct. Yeah, the bulkhead creates the structural, and the rubber boot definitely provides you better odds of little to no seepage into the casing.
But the other problem with the rubber boot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Arvid, is that it's a void, right? I mean, you don't fill the rubber boot with anything, do you?
No, you don't. And that is a good point to bring up, is that
That's where
there are
that's where we had
Yeah,
a previous
there are-
problem. Is the rubber boot collapsed and created a sinkhole?
Yeah, and
so
that's
no more. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Other than I think it's a better idea. I think somebody mentioned to coat the bulkhead. That's better than these rubber boots. I don't see these rubber boots to me is problematic.
Yeah, well, what, to your point, when we watch them, so we build the brick and mortar bulkhead, we put a rubber boot on the end of a casing, and depending on how the contractor backfills the pit, the boot will oftentimes, if it's put on properly, will lay flat on the carrier pipe and then have a little turn up as it goes up against the bulkhead, and then it wraps around the casing. But if a contractor isn't careful when they're backfilling, the vast majority of the time as they're backfilling and dumping dirt in from up the top, as the dirt falls and hits that rubber boot, it just rips it right off anyway. Because you have to be very cautious, because all it is a piece of rubber wrapped around with a single screw clamp on it. So yes, to your point, here's the thing: rubber boots came about because you see them oftentimes on above ground crossings where a casing is carrying something across a canal or something, and you'll see the end of the casing capped with a rubber boot. That's where they originated from. They didn't originate as in-ground applications. They originated as above ground applications, and then somebody somewhere started deciding they were a good in-ground application, maybe for water prevention or something like that. But I mean, if you wanted to go to the nth degree, you could brick and mortar it, coat it, and then put a rubber boot on it. And now you've got yourself, in theory, a relatively watertight bulkhead
Arvid,
that is
rubber boot different from link seal?
a link seal is different. Yeah. So link seal is a product that goes around the carrier pipe, slides inside the casing, and then it gets constricted, bolted down, and it forces a rubber donut out against the casing, and then also against the product line.
Right.
The catch is with link seals, and I'm not 100% versatile on these, but they're designed for perfectly centered products. So long as you've got a 12-inch water line on spacers centered in a 30-inch casing, you can put a link seal around that in that opening, bolt it, cinch it down, and now it's going to push out and seal that. You see those a lot of times when they make concrete wall penetrations.
Yeah, but that's mainly for smaller diameter stuff. I've never seen it used for something larger. And
I don't know to what extent and what size they make it, for sure.
yeah, and keep in mind that if you're going to use a link seal or something similar, that's a concentric item. So if you've got a carrier pipe with its gravity line, then it may enter the casing at a different elevation.
Correct.
Where it exits. You can't use that because
No, you're correct. Yeah, and that's what I was going to finish up with is when you build a tunnel for a gravity feed sewer line, the industry pretty much sets up the tunnel so that it's anywhere from 5 to 7 inches below the invert of the sewer line, and then they install the casing, because inevitably, because of gravity, casings always want to dive, and so that gives them the ability to prop up the railing or prop up the wood skids once the tunnel gets to the end point, and then still get the carrier line on grade and still have enough room for the 2-inch lines at the top to blow in the pea gravel, which is why the casings are larger for gravity feed applications than they are for pressurized applications. But yeah, that's the reason why link seals don't work on gravity feed, because it's not centered. It's offset down low.
Thanks.
All right, that was some great discussion, Arvid. You're kind of giving a class here if you weren't noticing. So
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Well, thank you again. I didn't mean to talk so much, but yeah, it's kind of what I do for a living.
I appreciate it.
Well, Mr. Chair, what I got out of the last portion of that with Jim's comment was it sounds like Jim would prefer not to have that rubber seal on the end because it's causing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's causing more problems
Correct.
than it's worth. So Jim, are you suggesting more of put Flex Seal on it or more of like a bituminous or something to seal up for water infiltration? Is that what I was hearing?
Well, I mean, again, I kind of want to leave it up to agencies to decide, but I just, you know, just you got to be aware that rubber boot, like I said, in our instance, it created a void, and then we had a settlement issue. Luckily, we caught it before we paved over it, but it's not. I don't know.
It's causing more problems
Yeah.
than it's
No,
worth.
that's why I think it's important to differentiate the two purposes of, right?
I think we need to, like Arvid said, we need to wordsmith this and leave it up, or if an agency wants to seal it better with some kind of product, it should be definitely a submittal and should be approved.
Yeah, but I think it's important that you to outline that, you know, that the method of sealing is different, and if rubber boots are that problematic.
I think that we need to say that the bulkhead for structural integrity is a requirement. Anything that if you want to seal it would be in addition. But at a minimum, we need to have a concrete or a brick and mortar bulkhead just for structural purposes to seal the ends off. And then if you want to seal it, then, you know, we can wordsmith something in there where we can allow for that. So that'd be my suggestion. So.
Okay, well, let me do this then. Let me, for the sake of time, go back and wordsmith this paragraph up and then add in some of the other recommendations, and then we'll run it around the working group
Yeah.
for a little bit and make sure we've got some good agreement there before we bring it back to the committee, so we're not wasting your time.
But I would like to take the opportunity here to really line this out. You know, I know the discussion was long, but it's important because some of these development projects I see that like I think Mr. Chairman, you mentioned it. You know, it's like there's not enough information, and it kind of leaves it up to MAG here to finish it off for the contractor, and because there's just not enough detail on the plans, and so let's take the opportunity to make sure we address everything and to get these installed correctly. So.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I'll work on adding to it accordingly to hopefully make it more informative and educational for those that use it.
All right, we'll move on to case number 8, case 2605, revising storm water manhole details 520 and 521. Jim, you want to give us an update? Have you heard any other comments on this case?
No, Mr. Chairman, I haven't. So we had some discussion on it at the last working group, but I think everybody seems to be on board with it. So we were, like I said, we kind of made it flexible. Where on the larger diameter, you got a base, the base, not just how do we word that? Formwork.
It says manhole.
Yeah. So no, I haven't had anything specific other than that.
And I like the addition, Mr. Chair, I like the addition of note 6.
Yeah, because the larger pipe, they call it an encasement. So I think we just made sure we made that clear. So it covers both. Obviously, you should form it, but this way we make it definite. So.
Well, it's constructed in one placement as well.
Yeah.
So,
That's good to have in there.
So yeah, if we don't have any other comments, I'd like to see if we can maybe vote on it next time. So.
Actually, I think this one is up for action. So if nobody has any other comment, or I guess I'll open it up to the rest of the members to see if anybody was planning on getting more input from their agencies. But if not, I'd definitely like to see if there's support for putting this up for a vote.
This is Warren. I support that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd motion also to vote on this case.
All right, that counts as.
Was that a motion from
I
Warren?
believe so, right, Warren? You were motion to for voting.
Sure, I'll motion.
I made it official.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So with a second motion, let's go ahead and think about.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, case 2605. Avondale,
Yes.
Buckeye,
Yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
El Mirage,
Yes.
Lawrence, Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear,
Yes.
Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe, Tolleson. Tolleson, are you there? Youngtown. Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Jim, for getting this one cut up.
Thank you, everybody.
Let's go to new case number 926-06. New detail 160-1 for chain link fence and gate. Marty, I think you shared this via email. Would you mind kind of introducing us and walking through the case you're proposing?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We've had issues in the field during the design in which they want to use that detail, but without the barbed wire. That particular detail just has specified barbed wire. So we went through the process of maybe developing another detail and put that as a case, so we can have a detail without the barbed wire, and then renumber it, such as like that. And also that 6 foot plus or minus in the middle, we think that was incorrect. I think it is supposed to be 6 inches. So that was a minor error within the detail itself. And other than that, we would like to propose to create a new detail without the barbed wire. So, any comments, questions? And then this came about because of design issues in which we've been wanting to do a fence without the barbed wire. So we've been calling it out, customizing it, doing modification, or doing an ADOT detail that doesn't have a barbed wire, so forth.
All right, this is a new case. Does anybody have a comment on this?
Yeah, if there's any comments, questions, we can still tweak on it. We spent some time looking at this to try to get a good case to submit.
So I take it that in essence, Marty, the approach was just to remove any reference to barbed wire.
Yes, yeah, in that detail. The other option was just to make the barbed wire optional, but that was too many components to do that. So we just went ahead and did the new detail, 6 foot chain link fence and gate, just plain, and then the one with the barbed wire is the existing detail, just renumbered to 160-2. So
That seems pretty cut and dry. Peter, were you have a comment or no? All right, anybody?
I had a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So up on the draft version, I guess. I know we've got a. Did we add a dimension for the gate clearance from the ground? I know we got 2 inches there on the fence, but it might be helpful to have a 2-inch dimension for the gate as well. Because we've had problems with that, where it's not called out. So
2-inch dimension of the gate.
You're going to maintain 2 inches clearance, from the ground for the gate as well as the fence, or what?
Yeah, we can add that.
Or do you want more clearance? I don't know. So I wouldn't recommend it, but
Right. Okay, yeah, because it doesn't say there, so yeah, we can add that.
Were you just picturing putting another 2-inch call out right on one of the gates? Jim, is that what you're?
yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, because we had an episode, and contractor said, "Well, it doesn't say," because we had like 4 inches, and we said, we can't have that. So, but it happens. So.
Right.
Well, I don't know that I would want to say minimum because then.
Sorry, I'm not using my mic. You may want to, instead of just calling out a height, call out some tolerance or range. Otherwise, you may have the opposite where it's not 2.0 inches and a
Plus
What
quarter
was
inch.
What was that last part? I didn't quite hear that.
Does anybody have any other input? I mean, I don't know that a minimum or a maximum is probably bad in its own way.
Right.
Will be a better way to handle.
Okay.
What would the maximum you'd want to see on a fence like that? We don't do too many. I'm not involved in construction of too many of these fences. We've done a couple around some sports fields. I don't
Right.
think there'd be that much attention to that.
McDOT does a lot of these, in a variety of places. I'm not sure, we can take a look at that. I know that one had 2 inches on the fence itself, not the gate. But he's right, and especially when we do those driveways or do gates, and they have to, they need to meet clearance. So we can take a look at that.
could you add a maximum and then some
Yeah.
definition that it moves freely or something?
Yes, you can do that.
That or
That makes-
a range, right? 2 to 2.5 inches, something like that. Gives you some working room for adjustment.
Okay, I can do that.
All right. Well, please, everybody go back and take a look at it and share with your, within your agency for comments.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Item number 10, case 2607. Updates to street sign detail 131-1. Warren, I believe you're sponsoring this case.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I was looking to put together the case for the on-street parking detail, I realized I needed a call out for the sign base, and looking at this mag detail, it's a little old and it's missing the predominant standard that most of the agencies have, which is the square tubing. So that thought was to look at the different agency details. I looked at about 9 different agency details, and most of our details are very similar with the square tubing, just some little nuances here and there on depth and things like that. I opted to use the City Mesa detail, so they were gracious enough to share that with me, and I modified it somewhat for some of them. And I missed a few things I noticed as I'm looking at it again, where it says COM. So I modified a few things. Gene had provided some initial input, so I incorporated his comments. But so it seemed like this type of breakaway, more commonly known as the Telspar, is the standard for public rights of way. MUTCD prefers the 2x2 size. However, in some cases, I think the smaller gauge or smaller size 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 is fine for like a no parking sign, for example, but the larger 2x2 is meant for, larger signs and wind loads and things like that. So it's probably a given, like I said, it's the MUTCD standard, so. So going back to page 1, I forgot to mention one other thing, Gordon. So yeah, so I got some input from my sign shop, along with Jose reached out to his sign shop as well. It sounds like type A and type B are still being used. I'm not sure too much on the type C for our sign folks out there. So I would first thought about maybe eliminating type C but I thought I'd leave it for now and get input since this is new. That note on the bottom, thanks, that was a good idea, Gene. Obviously, in any of these cases, we should be obviously contacting Arizona 811, since we are going kind of deep with these, just to prevent any issues with that. So that's it in a nutshell. Thought was to add this standard sign base and into MAG. So I'll open it up to comments.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. So what about, I mean, we use the one on the other sheet there, the with no concrete. We've had a lot of success with that. It's just a little more flexible if they get hit, and then they're a lot easier to replace. What about if we call that out as a type, where you because I know you got type A, B, and C, and then on the other sheet on -2 detail, you just call them elevation. So I'd like to maybe see that as a type D, if you want to give it a name, where you don't use the concrete and just use the outer sleeve, as you drive that, and then you drive the others inside of that.
So Jim, in that note on the bottom left, I mean, obviously you can do the drive-in method, but there are instances out there that the soil conditions may not allow for that scenario, where you would need to use a concrete encasement. So that's why that lower right call out is there.
Yeah, Warren, that's correct. We've run into that scenario numerous times where the soil conditions will not support the direct driven post in there. So we do have to put a footing in. Try to avoid it, Jim, but ultimately we got to get the thing to stand up straight, right?
Yeah. So and then if we got a lot of sandy conditions, we'll put a concrete in there. So you want to just leave it as an alternate for installation then?
Exactly.
Okay.
There is one other type of mount that I have seen, and I thought I'd at least mention it to everyone if there's interest, but that's the direct plate type of mount that would go on like an existing concrete with drive-ins into the concrete. So I've seen that as well. So, but I that's something we can talk about if there's a desire to have that.
Where my comment would be is this detail does expand a little bit more into the actual sign placement, not just the anchor base.
That is true. I opted to keep some of that. And in fact, over on the lower right detail, I added some of the other agency details had that curb shown and that 2-foot minimum offset, which is pretty much standard for a lot of our agencies, I think, from behind the curb, just for the placement.
Yeah, but
and the height information as well. You're right, Jose. So it did expand a little bit beyond, but I opted to keep that for now and get some input.
And we can get input, right, whether or not we want that in MAG, but if we're going to leave it in MAG, should we make it more than applicable to all the different signposts? Because right now it's technically under
That's true.
D. So
You're right.
Maybe
You're right.
just to keep it consistent, the type D anchor base or sign base should look similar to the 3 options, and then maybe a sign placement detail that goes into that can be applied to all the different posts.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, maybe we could do that just to kind of make it applicable to all types.
Yeah, but I'd love to get input from all the other agencies, whether or not they they have a preference or not to expand the detail into the sign placement. It is pretty standard stuff, what's called out in here with the 7-foot height and the 2 foot from the back of curve. It's not.
Yeah,
Not
that,
too-
obviously that 7 foot is the standard MUTCD and
Mr. Chairman, this goes back 20 years ago. And this was one of the cases that we discussed of creating when we looked at how we could consolidate and reduce the number of agency supplements. So I would encourage looking at each agency, look at the supplement, see what can be adapted into this and what must, maybe the sign placement would be one that each agency is going to have their own. Maybe we couldn't have that option, but this was one of the ones I remember was prime for trying to reduce supplements with. So think of it that way also with everybody. Look at your supplement and see, hey, could we eliminate my supplement if I just put this in here or reduce the content of the supplement?
thank you, Peter. Good point. Yeah, like I said, of the 9 I looked at, they were all very similar.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question for Warren. On the corner bolt, I'm not sure that I've seen Glendale use that style corner bolt. Usually it's a through bolt and it's an anti-tamper bolt or nut. It's a carriage bolt with an anti-tamper nut, whether that's a Pentahead or what, I can't recall. Is this calling for just a standard nut and a corner bolt? I'm not used to the corner bolt. Did you see that consistent across some of the other agencies?
That we would have to kind of study and look through. You're right, there are definitely some variants. If Gordon, we could look at that now if you'd like to look at the different agency details, but I can study that out offline. But maybe we need to get I know each sign shop may have some preferences there. We'd have to definitely get some input on that.
I guess if we're going to be using corner bolts like that, it would just mean the agency would have to stock those corner bolts instead of just the through bolts. But then the next question would be what I had mentioned about we have corner bolt, lock washer and nut. Was there any intention on having an anti-tamper nut?
And I did see that on some of the details. I hate to put Mace on the spot because I haven't talked to them on that specifics, but they may have some input on why they like this and or not.
I watched our guys install it. You know what they do? They just they don't use the corner bolt. They go right through and then they cut off. They take a hammer and they smash the bolt and there's no way you're going to get that nut off, and then they just cut the excess off.
Yeah, that's probably true, Jim. Whatever we show on this, they may do it completely different in the field too. So
I know. And I said, well, how do you get it off? He said, we just take a grinder. It's off in 2 seconds.
So this may be where you need to look at a couple different alternatives.
That's a
and
good
some
point,
language
Peter.
like either lock nut or peened end.
Or hardware by agency.
And
You
this
might have to
is-
come down to that.
Yeah, or by agency or something. Yeah.
I like that technical term, Peter, peened.
Well, we run into this in the electric power industry with the big poles when you put them on anchor bolts. And what do you do for that? Well, you can use a lock nut, you can triple lock it, or peen it, and different utilities do it. So I've had to write standards for that too. On here's your alternatives.
That's where the ball peen hammer came in.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, Roy, I think Scottsdale has an interesting attachment for their sign as well. It was a little different than the others, but
Got to be Scottsdale.
So, okay, I agree with you, Peter. I'll try to figure that out, but to come up with either like per agency but I figured we'd pick something and then have something else as an option, I guess.
No, but thanks for this, because it's a much needed option, because it's probably the most prevalent option now.
You
the
may
tough
not
part.
you may not get them all, but if you can capture the majority and reduce the number of supplements and make it a bit more uniform. And then over the long run, somebody may say, I like the way Meg's doing it, and just change theirs.
Well, and
It's just one of the challenging ones to do. You've taken on one I remember was a little bit of glazing of the eyes over.
to your point, Mr. Chair, the Telspar is that's the gold standard. It seems like everybody's using it across the valley. I mean, geez, you saw Warren, you and Jose saw those pictures I sent you. They're using it in San Diego for hand railing. It's,
So true.
All right, well, thanks. Thanks for introducing the case, Warren. Moving on to item 11, case 2608, revised section 634 and details 399. I guess it's a case of lesson learned over the last year, right, Warren?
This is true, and it's ongoing. So
Can you
yeah,
go ahead,
in
kind
a
of
nut, go ahead. I'm
an
sorry, Mr.
update
Chair.
on what the case is about?
Yeah, so yeah, in a nutshell, we've shared kind of some tidbits along the way of as Jose mentioned, some things that we've learned in the field, so that led to some need to make some clarifications and some edits to this case from last year. The high level items are kind of sketched out here on what some changes to section 632. We've looked at these through the water and sewer working group, so I thought it'd be time just to submit this as an active case to get to the broader group. Still some items here that we'll look at. They're more or less in draft and need some further discussion, but some of the things discussed in the water sewer is to the desire to offer some options, and which could be options to not use grounding rods in certain instances, or fewer above ground access boxes, things like that. So but I'd be cautious as we're doing this. I've said what we have in this package in 632 and detail 39 is, if it's done properly, it's a fully working tracer system. As we start modifying it, offer options, then there's going to be some sacrifices and pros and cons. So we just got to make sure we talk about that. But so I've marked this up a little bit. The green boxes up there, just wanted to kind of bring to everyone's attention that when we set it up, that it did allow for options per se in those statements there. We just didn't say how to do it. So again, the combinations thereof would mean this case is meant for tracer wire, but if you wanted to have a combination of tracer wire and marker balls, or maybe there's marker tape now out there, different methods that you could do that would still meet the ARS requirements. So then I just added some clarifications and comments I've received through, just to streamline the abbreviation. The connectors, just terminology, added some statements there, just to kind of make this make sense to the detail. That's about it on those. Now we're getting into some of these potential options that we've talked about in the water sewer working group. So definitely need to talk about this more in the next meeting, but wanted to get something out there. But the two different service laterals, I thought we might want to talk about in the working group a little more, but just some comments there, and then keep going. This is still in development at 2. We've talked about if we're going to have the third-party testers out there, we might need to provide some input about those requirements and certifications and things like that. So that's still in process too. We need to talk more about that. All right, now we're getting into what changes we're talking about for the details. The first one is for the connectors. This just cleans up some of the notes, some of the things we've learned about when you do expose those wires. You got to make sure that they don't get exposed to the ground, which would short the system out. So just some clarification on that. just some clean up on the notes, just to make it a little easier to read, for the, how to join the ends of tracer wire, and then the actual direct vary lug connection, when you connect branches to main or service laterals. What's it on that? All right, so this is what really needed to be done with the case, is to modify the details to show the service lateral, the placement of the grounding rod in this profile view. So that this is where we need to spend a little more work for this next package, so the committee can see exactly what we're in a CAD update. So we'll be working on that, but so this is still kind of raw, as I mentioned, with a bunch of notes here, but we'll get this further for the next committee meeting. Same thing for the sewer, or yeah, this just provides another graphic of what we're talking about. And some revisions to the fire hydrant detail as well. And the sewer as well, to show across, we're going to show a profile for that as well. And there were some questions about this sewer manhole. It shows how the tracer wire goes around a typical sewer manhole, but this one is really at the termination. And just another note, as mentioned, with this fully working system, as we removed if we were to remove access points, we got to be careful, because we still need to have places where the locator team can access the system, since it's not going to be in the street, it's in the right of way. So that'll be something we have to be cautious with. And the other topic, Jim, that came up is if we eliminate the grounding rods at the meter services, locator would have to have their own grounding rod that they would stake at the time, and connect to the line. But that could, if they're going to be staking out in a residential property, that stake could hit irrigation and things like that. So there's definitely some drawbacks with that too. So we'll have to talk about that. But
Wiring much more wire, and we're going to require you to pull an electrical permit.
oh, sorry, Gene, I missed that.
Much more wire, and we're going to require you to pull an electrical permit.
That's a good one.
I had a question though regarding the locator tape. Maybe my experience isn't the same as others, but I found that locator tape isn't a good substitute for marking the line. It's more for a dig, to know that you have a water line, that you're close to the water line. It is somewhat conductive, but I think it's more, in my experience, it's more of a visual tool for when you're excavating, and not necessarily trying to chase down the running line of a pipe. Is that your experience as well?
That's accurate. What I was speaking to is, we had a presentation. There is this new type of locator tape that it incorporates locator wire using the same technology as the marker balls, where every so many feet there's a marker ball chip that emits a signal, that you have to have specialized equipment to detect it, but that's what I'm referring to. So it's
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
Does anyone else has any other comments or question? Seems like there's a lot of revisions.
Yeah, it this glance it does, but I think once we get the CAD work, I think it'll look less.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Yeah, it's a lot of changes. So, I'd like to get some feedback again through the working group on what agencies have you started to use this in subdivisions? Because we get a lot of questions from contractors. Because, in a regular project, it's not too bad, that you want to make sure you catch all the hydrants. But when you subdivision, you got all these sewer and water services, and it gets pretty extensive. And you really got to see what your locators are going to use. Are you going to install stuff you're not going to use, or so I don't know how you do this without having to, agencies have to do their own supplements. Like you said, Warren, if you remove any of these stations, the accuracy is going to go down. But one of the things that we're wondering is, and on the sewer, you got a flush mount sewer test box there. I don't know if you could go to that detail, Gordon, but so you've got another box, at the surface, that, the questions we get is these things are going to get destroyed, so I don't know. I mean, they're handy if they can make it through construction, including the house construction. So just keep that in mind. So we really like to get some feedback of any agencies that have started to try to implement this, because that's what's going to be important in our comments here.
I agree, Jim. And in particular with sewer, if we were to remove that above ground access box above the sewer service, there aren't too many other instances because there aren't hydrants and other things that we would have where a locator could connect for sewer. So agreed, construction's not perfect, and if we eliminated a few, but at least there would be something out there shown on the as-built where they could connect to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like a lot of these newer subdivisions, they're narrow lots, and so the sewer services are, end up going underneath the driveways, and so
Yeah.
our question is, okay, then are these things going to have to be placed in the driveway? Because it says near the right-of-way line, so at that point you might be lined up with the service going out to the street, and you might be in a sidewalk or driveway. So just keep that in mind as you guys look at this. So.
Another other hard thing that I see that is there's multiple trades that are, in that when you go in the meter box, you're gonna have plumbers that are gonna go in there and they're gonna be messing with it. And it's not just a done, we walk away and it goes away. So there's many other people that are gonna be touching them, other trades driving over boxes and so on and so forth. It's just, by the time it's all said and done, ready to turn this thing over, those wires might be broken in several pieces just in that service area, not, those kind of things. So we might need to figure something else out.
And, historically, that's been the issue as well. They were in the manholes, they were in the valve boxes, those wires, they would get twisted up and exercising. So, yeah, no, you're right. The construction is not a perfect world. But
I just ran into something last week. Apache Junction Water Department, they run their connection points are actually in their valve boxes, so they're not using snake pits. And so as we turn the project over to sense the grading and someone else is doing the adjustments, their detail, the wires run up on the outside of the valve box, and when they come back to do the adjustments, the contractor's running the wires inside the valve box, and so they're pulling on them, but again, they're messing with our product that we put in. So therefore, who's responsible for it at that point? And when do we test it? And, before paving, after paving, there's just a lot of factors when you're coming with starting to test these things. And I don't know, like water services are mostly copper, right? That's, as we're trading them, but you can get a test on those too. So it's really gray area as far as being a contractor of when we're turning this over for warranty work. So just my 2 cents.
He's always getting hosed. That's the point he's trying to make.
Well, no, that is a good point. That is a good point. I see it in housing developments all the time where we're having to, hold the houses hostage until, not given C of O until all the meter boxes are fixed, because the meter boxes that were installed, they looked great, but after, the stucco guys and everybody gets out of there, those things are destroyed Now, who replaces that? I don't know. I look at the builder and I tell the builder, that's your responsibility to figure out who's going to replace those, but we're not taking ownership until they're corrected. And then, of course, they go backyard of the boxing ring with you guys and figure everything out. Warren, I did have one question, Mr. Chair. I had one question for Warren. With, you guys have implemented, I'm assuming that you guys have implemented some form of this tracer wire across your city, right?
Well, correct. We've experienced this with one of our water main replacement projects. I've got Katie here in my office with me too, because she's the one that presented at the AZ Water last week on this topic. So yes, we have experience and I've heard some pushback, just like Jim, on some recent private development projects where it's a learning process. This is definitely new. This has always been in our requirements for the tracer wire. It was just never fully developed and to have it fully connected. And like you mentioned, we heard feedback from our locators historically, even though it was a requirement, it never worked. And they could connect to a copper service line, like you said, but that was about it, just because of the copper. But now that we're introducing PEX and some other alternatives, then that's not going to work as well. So
Warren, the motivation behind that question was more so, have you seen a substantial increase in cost on your capital improvement projects by implementing pretty thorough, comprehensive tracer wire details?
I think there was definitely an uptick in the cost for the water main replacement projects related to that. Katie, did you?
I think it's kind of tricky because when they bid the project, I don't think this had been adopted yet. It was just more of like a heads up. So they just bid it as like tracer wire. And then once we got into it and they had to buy several different connectors because they were using the wrong connectors. So we'll have a better gauge on this new water main replacement project that we're getting into right now, but that's definitely a good thing to look at of cost savings and how much we're saving long term.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is definitely in process as people are using this more and realize that these grounding rods are, they're not cheap. The wire itself is cheap. It's these connectors and other components do add up. So there's truth to that.
Mr.
I
Chair.
apologize. I'm sitting kind of far away. I don't know if you guys could hear me.
No, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
What, to me, it would seem like going back to accurate as-built would be a heck of a lot more cost effective and
Click your heels together and say there's no place like.
yeah.
Right.
Because when as-built are correct, you don't need tracer wire. I've been digging ditches for 50 years and when the as-built was right, the pipe was within the 2 feet. It was easy to do. So I don't know. I think the tracer wire is redundant with what they think they're trying to do. They're trying to make it easy for someone that has no clue about sewer water work be able to go out and find a meter box or something. But it just seems to me to be way over the top of what's necessary. And I lived in the same subdivision for 41 years. And I don't think they've had to come out looking with tracer wire to find something in that subdivision the whole time I've been there. So anyway, just my thoughts.
Yeah, my trouble is getting good, accurate as-builts. We battle that as a municipality. We battle that with every project, I'm sure Warren can contest to that as well.
No, in fact, we brought that up and I agree. It seems like this is overkill, but we're, meeting the state requirements. And my thought was these days with technology, GIS, even the GIS systems are super accurate. However, we pitched that to our locator team. And like Gene said, we still have issues where as-builts are wrong, even though the GIS has been updated. So the locator team folks seem to support this from what they said, to have a fully working traceable system would save them time. But again, we're starting now. We have a lot of stuff out there that isn't traceable too. So
well, and to meet and to your point, Warren, we're trying to meet a code or a law, correct?
Right. Yeah, until it's changed, we're stuck with that.
And Glendale doesn't circumvent that process. We just opt for the alternative, which is the 3M marker balls.
Correct, which is an option. Exactly.
All right. Well, that was good discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Warren. I know there's more work to come on this case.
Yes.
Uh,
Thank you, everyone.
Item number 12, going into the outside of right-of-way cases. Case 26-A, Rip-Ride spillways details. Peter, can you give us an update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as I did not send anything new out yet, I was requested in our last meeting to do a little bit of research on slopes of the different types. And I think concrete, we weren't really concerned about that. So it's like details 5 and 7, we weren't really looking at. It was details 3, 4, and 6, 510-3, 4, and 6, which had riprap. So I did some looking at recommended maximum minimum slopes. There's very little on minimum slope. The only thing I could find was a National Resource Conservation Service document of 2007 that said flat slopes encourage vegetation establishment. So, but during this discussion, we've also been in the working group developing a revision to the riprap specification. And I found several things there I've provided to Wayne Colbank. We'll talk about that later, but one of the things that's being recognized is there's a difference between riprap that is angular and riprap that's grouted. And it ties into the same thing here. So part of what we may need to be doing is tying this into the future case, the case we're going to propose, which is identifying rounded versus angular versus types of placement. So that all set in there, it looked like going through Pima County, state of Texas, state of Minnesota, Soil Conservation Service, U.S. Army Corps. Generally, I found these different recommendations. When you're talking ungrouted riprap, that's rounded and placed and hand placed. In other words, nicely uniform place, or even angular riprap that's flatly placed. The 4-to-1 minimum still does not encourage vegetation. And there the maximum slope though can vary anywhere from 3.1 to 2.5 to 1. The 3.1 still seems to be the one for ungrouted riprap that has the most stability, especially when you're talking, and when you're talking angular or dumped, then you've got to be very careful on the maximum slopes. That's the angular, you can put it at a bigger slope. The dumped riprap, you've got to be careful because it can tend to roll. So there we're dealing with maybe a tighter range where you would not want to have the, you'd want to make sure it's tipped enough to where it drains enough and doesn't have enough catchments there, but not so much to where everything's rolling off. So I'll work on those two to try to come up with how to define those limits between angularity, rounded, and placement method. It's not just those two. Grouted riprap, a little bit simpler. Grouted riprap, you could go to the 4-to-1 slope. Generally, you've got the spaces in between. You're rarely dumping that, so it's being hand placed in there anyway. And often you get, depending how you grout it, you can even be putting in more of the flatter pieces. So the flatter slope of 4-to-1 seemed to make sense. And again, the top range would be, there's some recommending 1-to-1. The Army Corps still recommends a 1.5-to-1 maximum slope on even grouted riprap. I don't think that's too tight of a range on that. So based on, I said, looking at across the different ones, I think we can come up with a little bit better range, but we're going to have to be identifying types of material that are being placed in those two with grouted or ungrouted. I think, again, grouted is a little simpler. Ungrouted comes down to how you're placing it and what is the material. So I had not made a change because I wanted to report that back and get any feedback before moving on, but I think we are looking at potential for going and having a 4-to-1 slope and still not having a maintenance issue. And on the steeper end, 1.5-to-1, I still think is the better recommended range. And then we go to concrete.
Yes, thank you. As you're looking at defining the different types of riprap from an angularity perspective, there are only a few suppliers making those materials in this market. It might be good to engage them in that process as well.
Yeah, Wayne is doing that. He's made contact. He's a landscape architect, so he's the one that's approaching this before we get in. And that'll be a future case, like within the next probably, if not this, probably we'll bring it up for the June. I'm thinking in June, we're gonna come forward with the riprap revision spec. He's working on that now to contact, because that was one thing he was pointing out to me, I think in the correspondence we've had, is that he's still trying to find out what is available. And it's strange because we see more materials in that are being used than actually we can find available from the vendors. So we're assuming some of this is kind of a onesie thing.
I mean, some of it depends on specifically how it's constructed, whether they were able to reclaim some type of material, whether
Yeah.
they're using recycled materials or whether they're actually producing those. And really, as far as angular riprap, like I said, there's only a handful of
much.
sources in the valley.
I think the assumption is most of it's going to be recommendations for rounded riprap. And that rounded riprap, there you've got, it depends then how do you place the material.
Okay.
If you're hand placing rounded riprap, you can go steeper and, or you can, or you can go flatter. You have more opportunities, you have better range with hand placed riprap. If you're dealing with anything that's dumped, then you really have a tight range that you can put it in because it's either going to fall too fast or it's going to be so angular it's going to catch a bunch of stuff.
So we would typically call rounded riprap like a cobble, something.
Yeah,
like
that's,
that.
yeah, he's going to define that.
And that is something that we do not see commonly utilized. In most cases, if it's a riprap type application, they want that crushed quarried angular type stone.
And there we are in a much better situation
Mhm.
because you get it's more stable material, but you got to be careful getting it too flat because the catchment, it catches
Absolutely.
more material. So that's the reasoning for having that. But he's doing the research on that to where we can get that. Again, grouted, life is a lot better.
If you're looking for some help with those characteristics, I'd be happy to participate.
I will, yeah, we've got our, well, we'll talk about it when our next meeting is. It'd be great to
Okay.
have your participation with the working group. Thank you.
And perhaps I could even get one or two of our operations folks who actually deal with the process.
That would be
and go
wonderful.
speak to it.
Yeah, if somebody could sit in on the next working group, it's on the 21st of,
Okay.
of
Yeah,
the
if you
month.
could get me that in.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the input we're getting on. I'm hoping to get this all in so I can submit for June to this group. The revisions, we'll talk about it in the May meeting.
No, thank you for doing the research on the river. The only thing I would say, I'm glad that we're able on most of those applications go as flat as a 4-to-1. I think on the steep end, looking back, we might just want to consider where this is being used, right? Because most of these are gonna go into a basin or down a slope somewhere.
Yeah.
A 1.5-to-1 slope, it's probably gonna have to have something else rather than just landscape rock, right? It's gonna have to be some
Well, if
other
you're
stability
grouted-
method. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, if you're on that steep of a slope, and I can't imagine you have the spillway steeper than the slope. I guess it's feasible to do.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
But
Maybe
you're right on the slope itself. It's probably gonna be the whole thing's gonna be.
lined or something. right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, it'd be unusual.
Um,
That's why, in fact, I was really not even willing to go much to the 1-to-1.
yeah, so
1.5-to-1's pretty
I
stable.
think maybe that's where we can establish that range
Yeah.
to be in the practical, maybe 4-to-1 to 2-to-1 or something like that. So,
Yeah, yeah. I don't see that as being unreasonable at all. Like I said, Pima County goes 1-to-1, but again, I'm wondering where they'd use that.
Yeah.
That's their standard.
Would there potentially be any pushback? Because as you change that slope, you also change flow and or retention allowed in those areas too, correct?
Theoretically, I mean, I don't know if anybody's calculating the slope on a spillway going down into retention basins.
Yeah, the retention basin has a set depth, so it's gonna still retain.
Yeah.
The velocity might change
The
a little bit.
Velocity would
Yeah.
change, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how many people are looking at that per spillway riprap sizing.
Yeah.
It's-
technically, they should be looking at the sizing of their apron down the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah.
But
The apron's a bigger deal.
Yeah, the scouring of that.
Yeah.
Jim, you gonna say something? I'm sorry, I thought I saw you were moving around.
Yeah, it's, this is good, but one of the things we've noticed, and these sometimes get built after some of the utilities are installed, and the side slopes are sometimes can be a challenge because some of these subdivisions are so crowded with utilities that they don't have the room, so we end up having to build like walls, basically like little retaining walls, if you want to call it, vertical. You know, because there's just not enough width to build these scuppers and spillways per the plans, you know, because there's utilities in the way. And so the developers come back and say, well, you know, can we do this different? And so, you know, it just creates more of a problem, you know, more hazards. I don't know how you address that, Peter. If you, I don't know if you
Yeah, when you get into those onesies ones, the way I've done it in the past on very steep slopes, and it's not been in residential, it's been more outdoor setting, is with gabions, stair step gabions.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And that's something that was in the U.S. Army Corps document talking about when you start getting steep and you don't want to go concrete, that's gabions are a great way to go.
That's true.
I've done that. I have a paper I wrote years ago on doing those on steep slopes. I don't know if we want to go that far with this one. I think we probably.
I think if it can be considered a future. But
Yeah.
I don't like the whole, you know, having those steep slopes adjacent to the right of way.
And that's the other case we're talking about in the working group too. So how steep do you go and how far away do you want it from where people are walking and riding bikes and stuff?
Yeah. So are we gonna leave it up to the designers to choose the type of riprap, you know, the cobbles versus the angular riprap?
I think we're going to have to, but that's why we're going to be submitting a case with those options available to when you start selecting it, you've got to have a rounded versus angular option because those two options are available. That's what they're using.
Because we've had issues where they want the riprap to match the color of the DG. So what they do is they've got, you know, larger uncrushed rock that comes from the same pit, and they try to use that for riprap because they want the color to match the DG. And so I thought that was always interesting to try to get that grouted. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes. So I think we're going to finish getting input on this, and the plan is for the June meeting to submit a revision to it with the concepts identified.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anybody else has any other comment or question for Peter on this case? No? All right, we'll go into our last case. Case 26-B, multiple barrel detention backfill details. That is my case. From our last meeting, probably the only comment that came out was related to the sizing of the font of the detail. And given that on the new multiple barrel detail, we were utilizing 2 sheets to display on the information, it kind of made sense, some of the comments, to do the same thing for the single barrel application and make more room and enlarge the font. So in this month's packet, you'll see a revised, updated version of the detail that shows the first page and a second page with notes, just making everything larger and easier to read. And then also label single and multiple barrel detail. None of the language has changed. We just moved stuff around to make it easier to read.
Those look so nice.
With that, like I mentioned, none of the critical items have changed. I don't know if anybody has any other comment or question on this detail.
Mr. Chair, is there a requirement for the lift thickness for the haunching area, or is that described somewhere else in MAG?
The lift
thickness. So when you place that haunching material, you know, you'll see a 6 to 8 inch lift of material placed in and then compacted, because this is for what type of pipe?
Well, this is for CMP.
Okay.
So
and that would be my concern, is just that haunching area it's properly haunched. And that's, I guess, where my question comes in is there a minimum? Because if that's a 96 inch diameter pipe, I don't know, they're down there compacting it with a whacker or
There is a note, if you mind, go to, sheet 509-2 for the single application, that on the hunch shown, it's supposed to hand shovel or slice the hunching areas. I think that was part of the comments that.
But does it give you, do you do your first lift up to spring line of pipe? Or that's kind of where my,
We outlined it on the initial backfill. I will have to go back and look on the hunching, because yeah, for the larger pipes applications, that is a good comment.
I didn't look that far into it. I thought you might know off the top of your head.
No, I don't recall. I know we did it for the initial backfill. That's what I remember.
Yeah, and if it is a requirement, maybe we toss that.
I can look
Specification
into it to
here.
make sure. If not, at least we can maybe make a reference.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Chair, this is Warren. Apologies, I'm gonna have to leave shortly. If Jose, if you wouldn't mind covering the ADA working group update for me, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Apologies.
That should be an existing mag. Sure, I just don't.
I'll go back and look just to make sure we're covered. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to add the reference to note 3.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
launch
that's
detail,
kind of
so-
where I was going with that.
So,
Yeah.
I don't want to create too much extra work for
Yeah.
you.
right now in a draft mode is the best time to address it. All right. Does anybody else has any other question or comment? If not, I'll make those revisions and update it and we'll bring it back. If nobody has an objection, we might just make it as a potential action next month with Gene's comment
Yeah, I think
and
I think that would be
go from there.
that'd be fair.
All right. Let's go into the working group reports. Water and sewer working group, Jim, would you mind giving us an update?
Yeah, Warren, do you want to go first or what? Do you have to go or?
I think I'll cover the ADA stuff.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, Water and Sewer Working Group met on April 21st. I'm not going to go into all the details. We covered a lot of it today already previously on these cases. Good discussions. So, one of the couple additional things we covered in the working group was we had some discussion from City of Phoenix. City of Phoenix is, I guess, in the process of updating their supplements, and so they've got some good comments that we may want to look at. Maybe adding, and again, in the interest to try to maybe reduce some supplements. One of the things that came up out of that is they have a standard, I guess, horizontal vertical separation table for utilities. So it might be something we may want to put in MAG. Some standard, when it comes to like extra protection and just general clearance requirements in a table format. So you might see that from us in the near future. We also got to have a case coming in about, again, updating our specs to match some of the national standards with ASTM with water pipe, basically specifically ductile iron with the coatings that go on it, the mortar coating. I guess there's another seal coat that goes on, and we're probably going to make that optional. I think it kind of, current MAG has it as a requirement, and most of the industry is not doing that unless it's a specific request. So I think you're gonna see that change just again to get current with some of the current federal and industry standards. What else? We had a little discussion on the rings, manhole adjustment rings. Gene's working on. I think that was about it. Again, a lot of time on dedicated to the cases that you already heard previously. So next week or next month, we're gonna meet on the May 19th, or this month, I should say, for the next meeting. We are gonna have a presentation from Hobos, if anybody's interested you know, they're looking to submit as an added material in the 700 section. So if you're interested in the Hobos pipe, you know, basically, you know, for adding the FRP as a pipe option, we're gonna have that. And that was about it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Jim. Outside of right away, Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've talked about the first two cases already. The other ones we're working on right now are expanding the detention tank options to the cast in place concrete pipe option. Keith Kesty and Jared with Blue Corps are working on that. They've got some general draft ones. We're always trying to make things parallel, so everything is kind of following behind whatever happens with the existing CMP. We want to make sure that the details look fairly parallel to that. So I think we're in the point of providing reviews on that to the folks drafting it. Precast pipe option is also in process. That is the specification component has been modified by Adriana Lash, and I think she's now working on the detail component. So our hope is, if not this year, we'll definitely, I think the cast in place one will probably be ready. Precast, we'll see if it's going to be ready for this year by July to have an option there. As was mentioned, section 220, the placement and material for grouted riprap, the revised specification when Cobank is working on that. He had a draft sent out about, what was it, a week ago? Within the last week. I haven't had a chance to review it. We'll be talking about his draft options when we have our next meeting. I think that was, and then we also talked about safety rails. Where would you put them along side slopes? And I think we had some good discussion. I presented some ideas on the city of Phoenix, which looked to be an adaptation of an old ADOT specification. And I think the flatness of the slope was one thing we wanted to change on that, instead of being flatter than or have it equal to or less than. There's some things on that. So we've got some good discussion there. We'll continue that discussion on the safety rail need, and also just the idea of what would be a minimum maximum slope before you have to worry about pedestrians adjacent to that. Our next meeting will be May 21st at 10:30 a.m. It's a virtual meeting, so you don't have to worry about physically attending. But, do we need to get additional invites out, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, ours is virtual, fortunately. So if you go to the AGC or is it, wherever it's at, if you just bring your computer, you can just sit there and join in on the call. And Gordon can get you the invite on that. We would love to get your input on that, so we can try to get that one closer to finalizing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Thank you for the update, Peter. Alex, Asphalt and Mateo's working group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of conversation regarding the second forum meeting that happened. I appreciate everybody's conversation here today about consolidation of specs. That was a huge focus of that conversation. So I'm glad to see that that spurred into other areas as well. I think that will help the industry in general. So primarily, it's focused on some task force meetings task force groups that were established to look at changes to 710. The first task group was going to focus on gradation changes, coarse versus fine graded mixes, and potentially some mixed design changes with compactive effort. The second was going to be looking at binder selection, if we're using appropriate binder, percentage of wrap. Those meetings will be happening on, the first set of meetings is the 12th, so next week. And then the idea is that a framework will be established for how to move forward, and that the working group will start putting together an amendment to that 710 specification. We figured that was low-hanging fruit and a good place to start. So I really appreciate all the agencies' participation in the forum, and we're looking for as much participation as we can get in the task force and drafting of those specs. Beyond that, there was some conversation regarding some potential cases for City of Phoenix. They're drafting their 2027 addendum to MAG and potentially looking at bringing some things forward this year to potentially try and get included to reduce those addendums if possible. So, looking forward to that. And I know there will be some additional items in the future. Some things they had brought up was, optimum moisture requirements. I believe they're currently at 3%, restricting that down to 2%. The elimination of water consolidation and a couple other things. So we're looking forward to that as well.
All right, no, definitely, that was a good showing on the second summit by multiple agencies and industry.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate everybody's input there. Thank you.
All right. And then I'll give an update on the ADA working group. Last month, we had a presentation by Techway. They introduced kind of some of the new materials that are being used to provide more accessibility on our right-of-ways with the tactile walking surface indicators. And they're probably instituting more of a proper use and for the different devices, not just truncated domes, the trapezoidal shape barriers, as well as the tactile indicators. That was a good presentation, some best practices. I actually learned something that the city of Phoenix has a project that we will be constructing soon where we're going to implement some of those. So, and I was glad to hear that we're in line with what the current practices are. And I think the overall goal as that meeting was as a region, right, as a MAG region, to make sure we're kind of being consistent on how those new technologies are being implemented, so that the community as a whole that lives here in the valley knows what those different devices mean regardless of what city they're on. So with regards to the cases that we're reviewing, a lot of the things that are being pushed forward is the isometric view for our curb ramp details. We're starting with the directional ramps because that's where we're seeing a lot of the issues are things that are being missed on the field. The other item that we're working on is further developing the on-street parking requirements with a lot of coordination with the access board. Again, trying to stay in line to make sure that ultimately we are providing a construction detail, not a design guideline for that aspect. We are also working on a new bike ramp detail where we're connecting a multi-use path to bike lanes in the roadway. That's a modification or an adoption from a Flagstaff City of Scottsdale detail. And overall, that is sort of the highlights of the ADA working group. Our next meeting is May 21st, Thursday at 2:30. And it's via Teams for anybody that can attend. So with that, we'll just kind of wrap through the rest of our agenda. Item 15, potential cases. Is there anybody that wants to bring up a case that is not covered by a working group? Is there one else? Oh, there might be a few there. So, item number 16, staff report, Gordon.
I have nothing new to report this month.
All right, thank you. General discussion, any topics of interest related to the kind of work that we do, practices, anything else that the team members want to share?
One thing,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, is Arvid still on?
Arvid, are you there?
Arvid had mentioned never using AI. Just words of caution, Arvid, if you're listening. It'll lie to you with confidence. So
Yes.
be careful with that.
It's a very confident.
If you don't use it, just be cautious.
All right, no, that's a great reminder for those who have used it. Right? You have to double check it, just like anything else. Don't assume that what I'm saying is true. Item number 18, request for future agenda items. Does anybody has anything in mind that would like to bring up as a potential case for or presentation for the group? With that, our last item, anything else that anybody else wants to bring up related to current events, kind of share with the members, any other things that are going on? If not, well, thanks everyone. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Have a good one.